Hello friends, I'm Brian, and this is a Gizmo Board Games review. Today I am doing a first take on Lacrimosa, a game I received recently from the Essen trade show or game show or whatever you want to call it. It's a game that I think is coming out soon or may have just been pushed out. Have to look into it a little further. But this is a game, again, I said, got picked up at the Essen show here in Germany, and I've been able to play it a few times since picking it up. I'm going to preface by saying that this is a early reaction review. I've only played it a few times, and every one of those is technically at a 2-player count because I played the solo mode a couple times, and that's a 2-player game. And then I played once with my buddy, so that was another 2-player game. So I don't have any experience with anything higher than a 2-player count, and I'll bring that up probably in my review if I remember to do so as we move on. So this is a game that was published by Devir Games, and I'll have to put who created it. I don't remember anymore. I know I looked, but I've been setting up for a little bit and don't remember. But anyway, so a quick overview of how the game plays. Basically, the game is you're going to take these action cards. You're going to start off with 9. Everybody has the same 9 to start with, and there'll be more available as the game goes on. We'll kind of cover that as we hit up the actions. And then everybody starts with 1 opus card, and I'll put this here so you can check it out. 1 opus card, it's got a top half and a bottom half on. The top half is going to be basically the price divided off the board. This is starter card, so you see the little top part is blank. In the middle section, there's an image, and that kind of goes towards what kind of opus it is. The star opus is just the picture of the woman that you see there with the wreath kind of around her. Other ones have other images. Oh, let me leave that there. Actually, I was not done talking about it. And then on the bottom part, you have a top half and a bottom half action. One is to perform that opus, and basically you'll turn in the black resource you can see kind of there. The number of those resources will get bigger as the opus gets better later in the game. The starting one, again, it's going to cost you nothing to get 2 coins. And then the bottom half is if you sell that opus, and that is to take it out of the game. And then you'll get whatever resources it has pictured after that. And once it's out of the game, it is out of the game for good. Besides that, you'll have, like I said, the 9 action cards. And we'll go through these. These are how you're going to play the game. You got this nice double-layered board. And basically each action card has a top half and a bottom half. The top half is going to be the action you're playing, and you're going to put that into the top half of your double layer board. And then the bottom half will be the resources you generate at the end of the round, and you'll slide a corresponding card into the bottom half. And each hand, you're only going to have 4 cards. You're going to have 9 available, you shuffle them up, you'll draw 4, and then make your decisions based on the 4 cards in hand. And that's pretty much the gist of the game. Let's go over what these 5 actions are. So, the first action I'll show you here is the travel action, and that is to move Mozart around the board to various European cities, and you're going to do one of 2 things there. You're either going to take one of these small, basically resource tokens. That's not a good spot. Such as this one, where if I go there, I would pay the cost on the left-hand side there. In this case, it's going to be 2 of the red resources, basically, and then I would get 7 coins. So that is one type, the small visit the city and get the action or the resource there. Some will give you additional actions. Maybe you want a specific action. You don't have the card in your hand, but you see it on the board. But as you travel, you're also going to have to pay the coin cost. So the further you go, the more it's going to cost you to go from city to city. And then, again, like I said, you'll pay the resource, which is usually the travel, the red resource, on the one side of the card to take the resource or action that's on the other side of the disc. So some are going to be like that, where you get the 7 coins. Others are going to be such as this one, where you would take the corresponding action that's on it. And that's especially handy if you don't have that action in your hand, or if at some point later in the game you don't even have that action in your deck, because you can lose actions as you go, depending on how you play it. So that is the travel action. That is the move Mozart around and kind of show off his works across Europe. The other part of that action is if you hit one of the big cities, there you're going to get certain end-game scoring tiles. Again, you're going to pay the cost on the top left of the card. Yeah, that's left, right? So in this case, it would be the 2 of the wheels or 2 of the red resources. And then you would get what the arrow points to. In this case, it's 2 gold again. But on top of that, you would then take that card, and the bottom half is going to be your end game scoring. So if you get those certain pieces of the Requiem, in this case, it's going to be 2 fiddles and 2 horns onto the board by the end of the game, you would get the points corresponding underneath 7 points at the end of the game for that victory card. And you can't double down, so you couldn't get, say, this card with a similar card unless you could meet both cards individually. You're not allowed to double count, in this case, like the horns or the what is that, violins? I'm not music inclined. I should have prefaced this whole review with that. I don't know much about music at all, but I do like listening to Mozart. And so that's the other type of city action you can do. So you're basically going to move Mozart around, paying the cost in coins and travel resources. And then you'll either take the resource on the small cities or take an in-game scoring card to hang on to for later to try to meet those objectives as you play the rest of the game. So that covers the travel action. The next action, go ahead and look at this one. Again, top half is going to be what you're doing and sliding into your top half of your board. And the bottom part, as you see there, would be the 1 black resource you would generate at the end of the round. So this action is commissioning an opus. And this is where you would go to the board and purchase yet another opus card for the printed cost at the top of the board, plus at the top of the opus card itself. So let's say I buy this opus card here. Depending on where it is on the board, it could cost me more than the 1 black resource. And then it would also cost the coin that you can see printed up on the top left. I would immediately get the 2 victory points. Yep, looking at it a little closer. Sorry, I can't really tell on my screen there in front of me. 2 victory points I would get immediately once I paid the cost. And then I would take this opus and put it into my tableau in front of me, setting up potential future actions. So that was the second action. This action here, commission an opus. How you use the opuses is with this action here. You can play this card, and that goes towards your opuses. So once you have opuses, and you always start with 1, but this one I might have just bought here. If I use the perform action of the card, because that card has 2 potential actions, perform and sell. The perform is the top part here. Again, pay the cost in the black resource and tap the card, if you will, if you're a Magic player or whatever, but basically just turn it so you know you've used it in this round. You would get that. So I could turn this plus any black resources, in this case none, turn the card sideways, showing I used it, and then gain the 2 gold for that performance. The second half of the action, or the other option of the action, you don't get to do both, is to sell that opus. So I could sell that opus, and that is to discard it out of the game to take the bottom action. In this case, I would slide my ongoing things, resources, up 1, allowing me to get more things during the cleanup of each round. And get 2 victory points right away for that one. So you got the little resource tracker here on the left side of the player board. You move up in each round, you'll get more things based on where you are when you do the cleanup phase of the round. So that is the buy sell action right there. So that's 3 of the potential 5 actions you could have. The other action that you could potentially do is right there, and that is where you get to record memories. You've been traveling around with Mozart and you're remembering things, and basically all this means is you're going to take another action card. So again, you would slide that action into the top of the board and a different action in the bottom part of the board. Then you would go to the board and purchase a new action card for the price printed at the bottom or underneath the card on the board. They get more or less expensive depending on where they are on the board because they're going to slide down at the end of the rounds and move away. So you might want to hang on for later, hoping it gets a little cheaper. But the cost would be printed on the board. It's generally going to be 1, 2, or 3 resources and then 1, 2, or 3 coins. You would pick up the new card, and in this case, you would discard whatever it is you used in the bottom half of your board. You would discard that out of the game and put this new purchased card in, which potentially, if I show you here, could give you additional resources and additional actions. So this card, if I picked it up, when I play it now, I would get 1 white resource cube, 2 money, And then I could also then take the Share Memories action. So if I used this card to replace my basic card, this is not very good here, but as you can see, I would get the same action, but I would get a little bit more for the more advanced one. And I would have replaced some other card in my player board here. And then it generates a little bit different resources. Instead of the white and black resource, it would generate a white and red resource. So that's all that action's doing, is taking you to the board here to purchase new cards, increasing your action abilities. So that's something you're going to want to do along the way. But you got to be careful because you're going to discard a card, and you could discard other actions you might use later, and you don't have them anymore. I've done that in one game. I made the mistake of discarding all my commission and opus actions, and I couldn't commission an opus in the last round because I didn't have any of those action cards. So that's something to be careful of as you're playing. All right, and the final action is to Requiem, and that's where you'd visit the bottom half of the board. There are 5 different stages of the Requiem that you're trying to finish. That is kind of the theme of the game. And when you do this action, you're going to go to your player board, decide which instrument you want to contribute to which of the 5 phases. I forget what they're called. I'm real bad at this, but I would commission, say, to the violin here using one of my violin tokens, and then I would contribute to one of the 2 composers, and I would get various resource cards depending on which composer I contribute to. So I could have one of these 2 composers here. Let me scoot that over. And the cost of it, again, would be at the top, plus my whatever one of my discs here I played towards them, and then you can play them on either side. So one side represents one composer. Put it over here, might be a little better. And then the other side represents the other composer. So depending on which one I wanted to contribute to, I would place it that side up. And that's going to be a little bit of area control at the end of the game. And that's going to be a lot of the points are going to come down to how well you've contributed down there to which composers, and how many of your opponents have contributed the same or different composers. You're going to get various points from contributions at the bottom. All right, so that's kind of the game in a nutshell. I don't want to get into too depth. This game plays, again, through 4 action turns each round and 5 rounds. So you're going to, in the end of the game, you're going to have 20 total things you've done. Give or take a few more depending on the action cards you pick up along the way. But you're going to have 20 turns, basically, to do everything you can, and you're going to always do one of the 5 or 2 of the 5 actions, depending on, the action card again. At the end of each round, the board's going to flip to make the things on the bottom of the board a little bit stronger, a little bit more enticing. You'll fill in the blanks. On the top of the board, the cards on top of the board are going to slide down as you buy them, and at the end of the round, you're going to clear out the 4 rightmost ones, sliding everything down and filling in, starting with the new phase of tiles or cards. You'll get rid of whatever the phase that you just completed was and start the next phase. There's also going to be an end of round bonus. So depending on the end of round bonus that comes out and how well you've met at that round, such as the one I have here, for every travel action I played that round, I would get an extra red disc. The resources are black, white, and red, and the coins. And you have resource cubes. So you can either get the discs, which will carry on with you forever, or the cubes track, which will reset at the end of the round and then go back up based on what you've got at the bottom half of your turn. So you're kind of managing the resources and the actions as you go and trying to set yourself up for either future turns or future rounds even, depending on what you've played. Like I said, you have 9 action cards. They're going to cycle out. You're always going to have 9 action cards that you just might make them better as the game goes on, more enticing as you're getting rid of the starting ones. So you're always going to have an idea of what you have coming, depending on how you shuffle them up, and the 4 you draw, that's what you're going to be stuck with. Plus, you're going to have 1 left over at the end of the round, and that's the one you know is going to carry over to the next round. And that covers the basic gist of how to play. I think I said that already and then carried on. That's me rambling a little bit, but that's okay. Let's get into my my initial thoughts, final thoughts for now, I guess, having only played this a few times, and I would definitely want to play it more. All right, so looking into my final thoughts in the Gizmo scale, the first is the G, the gameplay. What do I think of the gameplay? This game plays a way I really like. It's action selection, card selection, minimal actions. You've only got 9 cards, and you're kind of dictating what those cards are as you go. And then based on what you have in your hand, those are your choices for actions. And you can kind of plan them out, but sometimes you kind of got to just luck of the draw it. I do like that, and similar games are some of my favorite styles of games, such as Terraforming Mars, Ares Expedition, Race for the Galaxy, and Concordia are all games where you've got certain number of action cards that you're just playing in the order you deem fit. I like that you're also managing the bottom half of the cards at the end of the round. Those are going to be the resources you're going to have next round. So you got to be very careful about what you play when and where, because you might want to take certain actions, but you might not have the resources to do it, depending on, not having thought about those when generating for the next round. I do like how tight this game gets. You start off with like 10 or 11, 12 money, and it feels like a lot at first, but you go through it quick, and now you're balancing money and resources. It's just got a lot of give or take. It's got a bunch of varied things to do. I pointed out the 5 actions. They're all kind of varied in what you're doing. You're either playing an area control game at the bottom, you're playing kind of a map manipulation game on the board, or you're playing to get more cards to get better actions or opuses later that are going to be kind of a set collection potentially, depending on the end game bonuses you pick up. So all that is well and good. I feel like there's a decent variety to the gameplay. However, I feel it could get a little samey because of the nature of those actions. You're going to have to play into the Requiem for the most part. That's where a bulk of the points are going to come from, is how well you manage down here. That's a lot of points sitting there if you don't take, or if you ignore it, you're gonna fall way behind. You kind of want to make sure you're playing the right composers into the right areas. And also that's going to play towards a lot of the end-game scoring cards. That said, that means you can't really ignore the map, except you kind of can. If you pick up a couple in-game scoring cards that mesh well, together, i.e. you pick up one Opus style card and one Requiem style card, and you don't need the resources on the board, you can pretty much be done traveling the world. And that is one of the gripes I have, I guess, is while I like the idea of traveling around and taking advantage of the things on the board, you don't necessarily have to after a certain number of times. You do have to do it at least once or twice if you want to get any kind of in-game scoring, or at least block your opponent. But other than that, there's not really a lot of incentive if you're managing your resources and things better. The only incentive would be to go down here and get the big city cards for the in-game scoring. I like that there's in round goals. Maybe you weren't thinking about doing some travel in the round, but now you're incentivized a little bit. Maybe there's points involved in taking certain actions this round, or whatever the case is. So that's just another thing to keep in mind. And there's 3 different ones of these each round that you can shuffle in and give a little variety to the game. And you're always shuffling out certain number of cards depending on player count and everything. So there's always going to be some variety just based on the number of cards, the number of action tiles, the number of your gold tiles. So there's some variety, although there's a lot of similarity in that variety, if that makes sense. There's only so many different things you're doing in the game in the end, so it will get probably a bit samey after some plays, and I kind of felt that in my plays a little bit. It almost felt like, well, I know I need to do Requiem 4 or 5 times in the game. I know I need to travel 2 or 3 times in the game, and then I guess, so that was what I said, 4 or 5 here, travel 2 or 3, so let's call that 7 to 8 actions. I've only got 20 actions, so that means I've got 12 free actions, but in those actions I need to come up here and get different cards, more cards. So it's okay. I feel like it could get a little old after a number of plays, but I don't think that'll be too quickly, just because the variety of cards and things that are in play and the way your actions come out and the like. So there's enough variety to keep it variable for now. I just feel like it's kind of samey in the variability, if that makes sense. All right, so that's enough about gameplay. It's good. It's my style of game. I could feel it get a little samey, and I guess we'll cover that when we get to the M. I, ingredients. How are the ingredients? The cards, average cards. I like the thick cardboard, the variety of the cardboard. You know, it's all decent. You got the wooden trackers here. These are cool. I love the double-sided player board that you can slide the cards into. It's a little tough, and I don't know if it's going to be conducive to sleeving the cards, so that could be a little strike against it. But I think there's room. I think they thought about that and made room. I don't know. I haven't sleeved my cards yet to try it out. But I feel like there's enough room where you probably could get away with sleeves that fit the cards pretty good and not have a problem with it. Everything else is pretty much wooden other than, you know, the cardboard bits you're using. I've already covered the variety. Just there's a stack of in-the-game scoring card. There's a stack of, you know, phase or round 1 through 5 cards. Good variety, opus, and the action cards, the memories. So I like the components. I think they're very good for the most part. A good variety of components in the wood and the cardboard and the cards. Above average, maybe average to above average as far as quality goes. And that's good enough for a game like this that you're not using the cards and stuff a whole lot. It's got linen finish. So they should last, and I don't see a problem with it. So I think the components are pretty good, and you got this nice little Mozart guy you're walking around here on the map, as much or as little as you're going to, and you know, I kind of covered that in the gameplay already. So I think the components are pretty good. Z, is it easy to play? It is easy to play and probably a bit hard to kind of perfect. It's going to take you a couple playthroughs, I think, to really get down the strategy you want to use. But as far as like, is it easy to play? Yes, it's easy to play. You're looking at a card, you're doing an action on the top half, and you're going to generate resources on the bottom half. And there's only 5 actions, and I cover what those actions do. The hard part comes in just managing those actions and the timing of everything, because again, you're only getting 20 turns in the game. So that's where a lot of complexity is going to come from, is just how you manage your actions more than the actual act of playing the game. So I think I could teach this game to anybody, but it would take them a few times to perfect how they're going to play it. All right, M, more of it. Is this a game you can play a lot of? From the start, I'm going to say yes. Like again, I covered plenty of variety in the cards, the goals, the action, you know, the small city goals, you know, the phases. You've got 4 different composers, so how you randomize those out onto the Requiem and their bonuses. And I didn't even cover, like, some of them give you ongoing bonuses and some of them give you round-in bonuses and the things like that. So there's plenty of different variety of things to look at and do. So yes, there's going to be a good amount of variety to allow for multiple plays with no issue. The only thing I said before is it's just, I think it's going to feel a bit samey, not because there's no variety, but just because it's kind of pseudo variety. There's only so many actions, you know, you can't collect all the goals. You know, you can. You're not going to meet them all, so you'd only be collecting them to stop your opponents from getting them. And then you're wasting money and travel points moving around the board doing it. So like I said, there's going to be a limited number of times you're going to want to travel the city. There's going to be a limited number of times that you can even play into the Requiem, because you're only going to be able to play the 7 instruments. Once you do that, you're done at the Requiem. It will get kind of samey, I think, just because of the nature of how the game plays. You've only got so many action points, and you need to use them wisely enough, and otherwise you're just wasting turns. Which means you're going to have a lot of times where you're going to need to, you know, like I said, travel the board 2 or 3 times, maybe 4 or 5 if you need the resources. You're going to play the Requiem 3, 4, or 5 times, depending on the goals you've picked up, if only to like make sure you're getting down here for in-game scoring. Even if you only care about playing towards the opuses because you're golds and stuff, and that is one thing you can do. You're still going to need to come down here a couple times just to make sure you're in that part of the game, or else you're going to be left behind, I think. I haven't tried that strategy, but that's my feeling. There's only so many times you can buy cards from the top, you know, even if you want to. You're cycling them in and out, and everything costs resource. So you've got to manage the resources, and the different resources go different places. The white ones work down here, the red ones work in the middle, and generally the black ones work up top. So once you've run out of those resources, even if you wanted to go do those things, you really can't. So I do like that there's a good variety of things to do. I just don't like how, to me, it feels like that variety could get samey anyway, if that makes sense. All right, and then finally, originality. Is this original? I think it's got enough new in it. I mean, it's kind of a collection of various components. You've got the action selection bit, resource generation bits at the bottom. You're building up your cards and your opus and everything here. You're playing a little bit of an area majority, area control, points control down here. That's going to allow you to get points and resources too. So I think the collection of it is fairly original. The theme is wonderfully original. You're helping Mozart finish his last piece, the Lacrimosa, and that theme, even though it doesn't really feel themey when you're playing it, just the idea of the theme I like. That's definitely original. It's not often you're playing a game which involves you playing pieces of music and choosing instruments and going around and performing. So I think the theme is very original. The gameplay combines a lot of components or ideas you're probably used to, but maybe not all together necessarily. I like that. I feel like the originality is pretty good, just taking in the theme, even if you ignore the gameplay and everything, which also feels to me kind of original. It just, the theme itself like gives it a boost for me for originality. So that's the Gizmo scale. Let's get into my final thoughts here. So my final rating, I think right now I've given this a 4.5. So I might have kicked on a little bit, and I'm going to kick on it probably a little bit more as I think of some things now at the end. The setup takes forever for a game that I think when we played it 2 players, it took us an hour and 20 minutes to include the teach. Or maybe I started the timer just after the teach, but it was still a learning progress for my buddy. So there's still questions and slowdowns, and we still played it in about an hour and 20 minutes. So I could see this being one that probably is about 45 minutes per player, and I think that's okay. That's probably pretty standard for games, and especially a game that is this thinky and this resourcey. But it takes a long time to get to that point. The setting up, I think, took me 30 minutes before he showed up. And playing the solo game, whatever, no matter the player count, your setup's going to be that long. You've got to separate, out the tiles at the bottom of the board. You got to separate out the cards by which round they show up in. You're shuffling out randomly some opuses and some of the memory cards for each round, depending on player count. You got to get all the player board set up. Everybody needs their starting hands. Just, there's a lot of things to set up. The setup took me a while. Another thing that I noticed with this is there's no player aid, and that's not the biggest gripe, but there's no helper of what each of the symbols mean. Like, what does that mean? If you haven't seen that before and you're not used to the game, even though they're printed on the board, it took me till my third play to notice that they were all kind of printed by where the actions were. So a player aid would help, just to kind of help figure out what all the icons mean. And there's a difference between, if I can find some here, maybe I'm not, but there's a difference between like get a cube versus get a circle, if I can find one here. Those are 2 different things. And like I said before, the cubes are going to reset at the end of the round if you didn't spend them all, whereas the circles you'll carry over. So just a help, an aid to give everybody. It could have been, another card would be enough to just say, hey, this is Fire Memories, this is Commission Opus, this is Requiem, this is, get a cube, this is get a circle, especially on the in-game goals cards, what does each one mean per se? Just anything that helps players know what they're looking at is always a good thing. and this one lacks the player aid. And then finally, the last comment I had written down is the game came with 5 rule books, and that one's upside down, of course. This was all in the box for the English version of the game. 5 rule books. These are not light rule books either. They weigh quite a bit. This is a lot of box weight, and I've taken out the non-English ones and only kept this one in the box because they don't fit and they're just added weights. I don't need anything but the English one, and I can see what they're trying to do with that, and not having to mail out different versions of games to everywhere, I guess. But if you've got, I don't know if they do. Maybe they don't have different language cards because the cards don't really need different. Everything's pretty much icons, so I guess you don't need the other language separated. But that's a lot of weight in the box, a lot of space taken up needlessly in the box, and I don't know. That's just my thoughts on that. Maybe just make the other rulebooks available for, you could put a note in the rulebook for other languages. Check out the website or whatever the case is. It just makes the box extra heavy, and once you break down, I've got the, not everybody's going to have these obviously, but once we get all my inserts in place, I've only got room for the one rule book. None of the rest fit anyway, so I've just got 4 rule books that are basically recycling for no real reason. Anyway, I think that's enough of me tearing into a game I really did enjoy. I don't want to make it seem like I didn't. I like the game. I feel like I could play it for a while, but I also feel like it could get a bit samey if I play it too much in spurts. So, yeah, it's the only kind of strike against it outside of just it takes a long time to set up, as a lot of these Euros do, so that's not the biggest hit against it either. So, yeah, my nitpicks are nitpicks. I enjoyed the game. I think it works for me and the style I like, and being a medium to medium heavy-ish Euro with the card action selection, resource generation, resource management, action management, and the ability to purchase into both of those as you play the game. Things get more powerful as you go along, and you've got to really think out and plan out your actions, because again, you're only going to get 4 around and 20 total for the game, so you've got to make sure you've got some of it a plan, and otherwise you're going to fail. If you're playing off the cuff, you're not gonna do as well. But again, you can only plan so far as you draw your deck, so it's got a little bit of deck management, deck building, if you will, to make it so you can do those actions you need to do. But at the same time, you could end up with a bunch of the wrong actions or the bad timing, or you can't afford the cards you want to get. So I think it's a good thinky game. I think I mentioned that before, and yeah, so those are my thoughts, initial thoughts on Lacrimosa. I appreciate everybody who voted. The 4 people who voted, this one won 2 to 1 to 1, so just my hot take. First couple playthroughs, I've only had this game a month. I've enjoyed it. I feel like there are just some things that might make it fall off as things progress. I gave it a 4.5 out of 5 on the Gizmo scale, and I think most people who enjoy this type of game will enjoy Lacrimosa. And if you liked this video, feel free to give me a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more of my offerings. Comment below if you've played Lacrimosa and what your thoughts were on those plays. And let me know what you might like to see me review or play in the future if you want. And I will catch you next time. Bye.